Hi, this is Charles Reed, President Get Payroll. Glad to be with you again. I have a very special guest today, Mario Venerosa. He is a financial planner, somebody I've dealt with for a number of years, and he's here to explain some things for small business people in retirement. Pleasure to have you here, Mario.
Thanks for having me, Charles. I appreciate it. And I want to say before we get started, happy Veterans Day. It's wonderful individuals like yourself that give young professionals like myself the freedoms and liberties to act. So happy Veterans Day first and foremost.
Thank you very much.
First and foremost, what I do is I work with a select group of investors, families, corporate retirement plans, and institutions. And simply put, I help them build, protect, and transition their wealth. I act as my client's personal CFO. So what I do is I call it the 3 Ps of investing. I sit down with every single one of my clients, whether they're a tech entrepreneur making $1 million a year, a small business owner, or a widow living off of investment income as their primary source of income. And what I do is I sit down with clients. I first and foremost create a plan. I see where they are now, point A, and where they need to be, which is point B, and I create a financial roadmap. And I call it the 3 Ps of investing. So my first P is planning. My second is portfolio, which is what type of investments do we need to implement in order to get you from A to B. And then the third P is prudent advice. I'm actually a fiduciary, which is a prevalent term in the financial industry, which means I have to act in my client's best interest. And many investors don't realize 90% of investment professionals are actually not fiduciaries, which means they could recommend products, double dip, they can collect commissions and advisory fees. I could never do that. I must act in my client's best interest. And aside from my legal background speaking, to me, it's the only way to act in the client's best interest.
And then, of course, the other P that you didn't mention in investing is always patience.
Oh, absolutely. That's actually the best P of them all, if you ask me.
Let's talk about year-end strategies, particularly for small businesses, but what should they be doing right now to reduce taxes for year-end?
Absolutely. So great question. So every single one of my clients between now and year-end, what I like to do is pay less taxes to the government if need be. So the more money we save, the more money we earn. Penny saved, penny earned. That's the way I think. And in order to do that, what I do is I look through a client's portfolio and I do tax loss harvesting. But you have to be careful because the IRS has rules out there, such as the wash sale rule, where if you sell a security and you buy it back within 30 days, and if it's identical, they'll disallow the tax loss. It's called the wash sale. So what I do between now and year end for all my clients, it's been a volatile year in the markets. I'm sure if someone has a diversified portfolio, there's 1 or 2 positions that you could perhaps take a tax loss in, and I swap that tax loss with a like-for-like security, which is perfectly legal and permissible. It's similar but not identical, and by doing that, the client owes less in taxes, which is usually beneficial.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, now one of the things for small businesses, of course, is retirement. We're all hoping to retire someday.
Yes.
So what about retirement planning for business owners and entrepreneurs?
Great question. So many small business owners or solopreneurs, I'll call them, self-employed businesses, they don't realize how many options they have available. And particularly, there's 2 components that I always recommend if you're a self-employed business owner. One would be a SEP IRA, which stands for Simplified Employee Pension. And the reason why I recommend that for small business owners or solopreneurs is that the contribution limits are much higher than a traditional IRA. You can contribute up to $57,000 versus a traditional IRA, you could contribute $6,000. So that's a benefit for clients that I recommend. The second thing is actually a UniK. Uni means one, and essentially it's a 401k for a self-employed business owner. And the cost to set up a UniK between now and year end is literally only $150. So for less money than taking you and your sweetheart out to dinner, you can create more or less a 401k for your single-owned business and build for the future in retirement. Because you're absolutely right. The numbers are staggering. 50% of Americans don't feel they have enough assets to retire comfortable. So plan.
I think a lot of my clients would be interested in that for sure. Uh, Inexpensive and a way to get a lot of money put away tax free, at least up front.
Absolutely.
So what would you do with potential clients for the year end for their retirement?
Yep. So another thing too, so it depends on, the client and what their needs are, but for small business owners, another thing I do, aside if they don't have a retirement plan, is review the retirement plan that they already have in place.
Okay.
One thing I like to do is I call it benchmarking, where if you currently have a 401k in place, I like to review your investments. Number one, to see if there's better investments available. I like to review the cost of the plan because just like anything else, you look at the iPhone of 10 years ago versus the new iPhone that's recently coming out, there's a big difference. And a lot of these plans have extra bells and whistles, and they're actually much more cost effective.
Okay,
So I like
excellent.
plan.
What about new corporate plans? Anything new with that?
Yes, absolutely. So there is actually new regulation that was passed at the beginning of this year called the Secure Act, which became effective January 1st, which I think many business owners don't realize because this year has been shadowed, obviously, because of the pandemic. But it has never been more advantageous for a business owner to possibly implement a 401k, and I'll explain why. There was an old rule last year where if you wanted to start a 401k plan, the government will give you $500 in a tax credit. Now, with the passage of the Secure Act, the new rule is instead of getting $500 as a tax credit, you can get up to $5,000. And you don't need to be a mathematician at Harvard to understand that 5,000 is greater than 500.
Absolutely.
Obviously, rules and stipulations within that, but basically the maximum in tax credits that a business could achieve is $5,000 with the passage of the Secure Act.
All right, excellent. Speaking of IRA accounts, can you explain the difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA?
Yes, that's actually a great question. So a traditional IRA is you make the contributions pre-tax, meaning you don't pay the taxes now. And then when you go to take out the money during retirement, that's when you pay the taxes. Conversely, a Roth IRA is you take after-tax money now, so meaning you've already paid the taxes, you put it into the Roth, but then you never get taxed again. So come retirement, you don't get taxed on any of the growth in the Roth IRA account. So one is the traditional IRA, you don't pay taxes now, but you pay them later. A Roth IRA is you pay taxes now, but you don't pay later. And between me and you, my best advice as an investment advisor and a fiduciary is look what's going on in the world. Earlier this year, we passed unprecedented stimulus for our economy. And as Ben Franklin says, the only thing certain is death and taxes. I like to add an extra mantra in there. In my opinion, the third thing that's certain is the taxes only go higher. They usually never go lower. So you could understand why it'd be very compelling to maybe consider a Roth IRA for investors now.
Yeah, it may be a long time before we get another tax cut. Okay, on a Roth IRA, what happens if you make income above the limits for a Roth? Because I know they're not for people that make a large sum of money.
Absolutely. So there is stipulations within the income limits. It's 124,000 if you're a single filer, and then that goes up to 139 a phase out. And if you file jointly, it's 206. But long story short, basically, if you make above the income limits, there's options we can do. And as an attorney, I like to have a plan A, B, and C in place. And what I always recommend to clients is if you make above the income limits, there's really two options you can do. Number one is we spoke about 401ks earlier. Many business owners don't realize they can add a Roth component to their 401k at no extra cost.
Wow.
And the reason why that's beneficial is that you're not subject to the income limits if it's a Roth 401k. So it's a backdoor way to contribute to a Roth. And the second thing you can do is actually a Roth conversion, where if you contribute to a traditional IRA, you could pay the taxes now and convert that into a Roth IRA. And obviously there's taxes and other considerations involved, but those are two options if you make above the income limits that you can implement as a business owner or investor.
All right. Any other year-end planning that we need to think about right now?
Yeah, So I would say first and foremost, taxes, reducing taxes, which we touched upon earlier. The second thing, which goes back to my 3 Ps of investing, planning, portfolio, and prudent advice, is I would strongly consider, if we learned anything from this year, is that life can change in a matter of a second. And I would urge every single investor to sit down with their advisor and go over their financial plan. Because I know now more than ever, I get 3 questions always asked to me as an investment advisor. Number 1 is, Mario, am I going to be able to retire comfortable on my terms? Number 2 is, how should I be invested in order to retire and optimize my retirement plan? And number 3 is, God forbid we ever have another 2008 scenario, or even the beginning of this year, the markets went down into a bear market quicker than ever. Am I going to be protected? What will my portfolio look like? And I can answer all of those questions with my financial planning software. As an investment advisor, I have the most sophisticated software. And what I recommend for potential clients and investors is sit down with your advisor, go over your goals, go over your plans, and make sure you have the right investments in place to optimize your path towards retirement. So in full summation, number 1 is lessen taxes, do any type of tax loss harvesting. Number 2 is reviewing your financial plan, making sure your investments are working in accordance to the way they should be. And then the third thing is just ancillary, whether it could be RMDs. Earlier this year, Congress passed the CARES Act, which waived RMDs requirement, which could have some consequences for an investor, whether it may make sense to take your RMD or not to take it. And then there's also some year-end gifting, some ancillary matters. But I would sit down with an advisor and make sure you do your year-end review and make sure your financial picture is strong.
Excellent.
And then there's one more other thing. Earlier, I touched upon how I act as my client's CFO. We all know the famous accounting equation, and you know it better than anyone with your accounting background, Charles, is assets minus liabilities equals your equity or your net worth. And another thing I like to do is take advantage of what's going on in the market. And if you didn't realize, in March, the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates to 0. So anybody who had a line of credit, or even a mortgage for that matter, any type of loan that they took out more than a year ago, it may make sense to refinance it. So aside from growing clients' assets and retirement, another thing I like to do is reduce liabilities. And I would consider having a full review in your financial plan and see, as a business owner, if it may make sense to lower any possible loans, commercial lines of credit, or even personally for yourself with a residential mortgage.
Excellent. Now, Mario, if somebody wants to contact you, how do they do that?
So they can call me, they can email me, they can also message me on LinkedIn, and I also developed a new website, kingsviewwoodbury.com, and they can contact me there as well. So if anyone has any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. The initial consultation is always complimentary, and I'd be more than happy to help anyone listening into this with this audience.
Well, very good. Mario, thank you very much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure to see you and talk to you as always. And again, I'm Charles Reed with Get Payroll. If you have any questions for Mario, you can see on the screen how to contact him, and you know how to contact me. Thank you very much for viewing this. Have a good day.
Thank you, Charles. Be well.